And so this verse is about living in the valleys, the dark times, the times that betray the harder sides of life. Even in our darkest valleys, our darkest days, David says, I've got good news. You don't have to go it alone because my God is there. He says in verse number 4, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. You are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. In Israel, there's actually a real place called Death Valley. They say that it is two basically cliffs that come side by side, and that the only time that the sun shines in the valley is when it is high noon directly over. Any variances thereafter, it casts light upon it, but most of the time it's just shadows. In order to get to the higher ground where the shepherds would be feeding their sheep, many of them, including David himself, would have had to have gone through the valley of the shadow of death. And the only time that they would see sunlight would be if it would be high noon, which doesn't last very long. In the midst of going through the valleys, they would come across predators, bears, and lions, and thieves, and people trying to steal. It was a dangerous place. And so as it got darker, as David walked through that valley with his sheep, he felt alone. And it was during those times that he reminded himself, oh, I'm not alone, because God is going to be there to take me every step of the way. When you look through the Bible, you'll actually see that valley is almost a metaphor for rough times in life. Joshua talks about the valley of calamity. Psalms 84 talks about the valley of weeping. Hosea talks about the valley of trouble. And the verse that we're looking at today in Hebrew actually means the valley of deep darkness. What I'm here today is to tell you is what David said and discovered so long ago, that if I'm going to enjoy the mountaintop experiences, I am going to go through some valleys in life. I am not going to be immune from them, even if I'm a good person. So what do you do when you're forced to go through these valleys? There's 5 things I think that you should remember. I'm going to give them to you real quickly. Number 1, valleys are inevitable. Okay? You're going to go through a valley. You're going to go through many valleys in life. I'm going to go through many valleys in life. They're going to happen just as you can count on the sun coming up during the day. You've got to come out of the valley in order to get to the mountaintop. And I have to understand that. So what can we say about valleys? Well, they're either on their way, you're either in one right now, or most likely there's one coming. I think it helps us to understand that valleys are a part of our life, and so that we don't spend our time in the valleys shocked and in dismay and trying to find out answers of what we did that was wrong. Jesus was very clear when he spoke to his disciples right before they left that it would not be a bed of roses. He said in John 16:33 to them, and it's a reminder to us today, in this world you will have trouble. It's not a matter of if, but when it's going to happen. You're going to have difficulties, you're going to have disappointments and discouragements in life. There are going to be times of suffering and sorrow and sickness. There's going to be times of frustration, failure, and fatigue. They're going to happen to you. Valleys in life are inevitable. So if I know that they're going to happen, then that kind of takes the shock away from them when all of a sudden I find myself in a valley. David says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'm not afraid, because I'm not going to walk alone. God is there to take care of me. The second thing I need to remember about valleys is that they are unpredictable. They're unpredictable. You can't plan on a valley. You can't schedule them in. Wouldn't it be great if all the bad stuff that happened in life, that we at the beginning of the year could say, January is a little cold, so that's not a real good time to have the car break down in the middle of the interstate. So let's pick up more of a spring day, and maybe I can take a couple days off during there because I won't have the car, afterwards. Wouldn't it be great if you could plan your valleys that way, where you put it in a schedule and you go, okay, I take it off a couple days because I know it was coming, and here I am, and I already made arrangements for another month to come. Flat tires don't come at convenient times. Very rarely will you ever hear somebody say, it could not happen at another time. I got a little extra money, I got a little extra time on my hand. This is the absolute best time. Now, sometimes we'll say, it could have been at a worse time, but very rarely do we say it could have been at a better time. Valleys are unpredictable. Valleys are sudden. You find yourself in them even before you realize that you were heading that way. Have you ever noticed how fast a good day can become a bad day? All it takes is an announcement over the intercom on an airplane, a phone call, an email, a doctor's checkup, a freak accident. Valleys happen. And the other thing that we need to realize about valleys is that they're unpredictable, but once you get through one, brace yourself because there's another one coming. Jeremiah 4:20 says it like this. He says, disaster follows disaster. In an instant, my tents are destroyed, my shelter falls in a moment. So one of the things that takes away the sting and the shock of valleys is to know that they're inevitable and that they're going to happen. You see, most of us, the first part of the valley experience of why we make it last a little bit longer is that we're just shocked that we are in the midst of this valley. Know in the back of our minds that they're going to happen. The other thing that you need to remember about valleys is that they are impartial. No one is immune to them. No one is insulated from pain and from sorrow. No one gets to go through life problem-free. Everybody has problems. Good people have problems, and bad people have problems. Now, we understand why bad people should have problems, right? That's something fair. But good people, why do good people have problems? Well, difficulties and downtimes and depression don't mean that you're a bad person. It means that you're a person. It doesn't mean that you're an evil human being if you're going through bad valleys. It means that you are a human being. The Bible is very clear that good things happen to bad people, and sometimes bad things happen to good people. So valleys are impartial. They don't care if you've been good or if you've been bad. They're just going to be a part of your life. Matthew, the 5th chapter, the 45th verse, it's Jesus that says it like this. He says it rains on the just people and on the unjust. And in other words, good is going to happen to bad people, good is going to happen to good people, but bad is also going to happen to bad and to good people. Maybe we should ask the next time that we go through it, instead of why me, we should say, why not me? You know? I mean, none of us are immune to it. None of us, we think to ourselves that maybe we should be exempt from problems because we do dot our I's, we cross our T's, we take our vitamins, we do our exercises, and yet here I am in the midst of this valley, and I never thought that I would be there. So instead of saying, why me, just realize that it's going to happen. And it's part about being human. This is not heaven. We live in a very imperfect world where there are problems and difficulties, but it is the valleys that will make the mountaintop experiences even better. The fourth thing about valleys is remember that they're temporary. That whenever you go through a difficult time, that David says as he goes through this verse that he is walking through the valley in the shadow of death. Notice he didn't say that he went to live there. He doesn't go there to stay. That even at the worst case scenario, you live 116 years. That's 116 years that maybe you walk through this valley. When you compare that to eternity, to millions and trillions of years, that's not even a speck on the radar. But the truth of the matter is, most of us, the majority of us, will never ever spend all of our lives in a valley. They are for going through. They're like a tunnel. You see the beginning of it, you're in the midst of it, and then you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Peter says it like this: there is wonderful joy ahead, even though the going is rough for a while down here. So you need to remember that the valleys will come, but they're not going to last forever. And even at worst case scenarios, let's say I do have to carry something with me through this lifetime, that it's a long valley, that even compared to eternity, that it's still a temporary situation. Finally, the last thing, valleys are purposeful. That God has a purpose for every valley. Now, I don't believe that God brings valleys upon us. I believe that sometimes it happens that we bring them upon ourselves. Sometimes it's something that other people have done to us. And sometimes it's just called being alive that we go through valleys. Though I don't believe that he brings them upon us, I do believe that he uses them. He walks through them with us, and then he finds a purpose for them. I'd like for you to think in your life where you're the strongest today. Most likely it's when you went through a difficult valley to get to where you are. You see, God always recycles pain. He tells us that we should forgive and forget our sins, but he never tells us that we should forgive or forget our pain. Pain makes us better people, makes us stronger people. It was the pain of a gruesome education that got me to where I wanted to go in my career. It was the difficult times of a marriage that got me through, that I understand what I'm looking for and what I don't want. It is the difficult, it is the pain that normally makes us much stronger. Think about the strengths where you are today. Where is it that you're the strongest? And I'll venture to tell you that you probably went through a valley to get to that strength. Was it a divorce? Was it cancer? Was it a death? Was it losing a job? Was it an alcoholic in the family? What was it exactly that, would you say that strength that you have today that came from? You see, when we go through the valleys, that's where things are built. God strengthens us. He gets us ready and prepared so that we can experience the mountaintops. But the only way that we can do it is to go through the valleys. According to an old fable, there was a man who made an unusual agreement with death. He told the Grim Reaper that he would willingly accompany him when it came time to die, but only on one condition, that death would send a messenger well in advance to warn him. Weeks weaned into months and months into years, and then one bitter winter evening, as the old man sat thinking about his possessions, death suddenly entered the room and tapped him on the shoulder. Startled, the man cried out, "You're here too soon. You came without warning." "I thought we had an agreement," Death replied. "I have more than kept my part. I've sent you many messengers along the way." As the man compelled, Death whispered to him. He said, "Notice your hair. Once it was full and black, now it is thin and white. Look at the way you cock your head and listen to me, because you can't hear very well. Observe how close to the mirror you have to stand to see yourself clearly. Yes, I've sent messengers through the years. I'm sorry you're not ready, but now it is time to leave." The Bible tells us nobody is truly prepared to live until we are ready to die. What do I do when I go through the dark valleys? Refuse to be discouraged. Remember that God is with me, and always rely upon God's protection for guidance.